Hi there, Jeep owners. Today in your 2014 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install Demco's Air Force One supplemental braking system. And this is what our system looks like when it's installed. The operating unit lives underneath the hood of the vehicle, and this is pretty much where all the magic happens. It receives the air from the motorhome and distributes it to the cylinder located on the pedal, which activates the brakes. There's 5 main components you'll need when flat towing your vehicle behind your motorhome. You'll need your tow bar, which is the connection between your vehicle and your motorhome. Your safety cables, which is a supplemental connection in addition to our tow bar. We also need our diode wiring, which will take all the lighting signals from our vehicle, from our motorhome, and transfer them back to our vehicles. People behind us will know our intentions when going down the road. And we'll also need our base plate, which provides the connection point on our vehicle for our tow bar and many of our mounting for many of our accessories. And lastly, you need your supplemental braking system, which will apply the brakes in your vehicle when you hit the brakes in your motorhome to help you come to a safe and smooth stop. If your motorhome has air brakes, this is going to be the best braking system for your vehicle. It's a truly proportional system that uses the air pressure from your motorhome to apply the cylinder on the brake pedal. So when I press the brake pedal here on our motorhome, it's going to apply the brakes in the vehicle. And what's great is the harder I press the pedal here, the harder it will apply the pedal back there, giving us the best feel when we go to stop our vehicle. Additionally, we have a breakaway switch located in front of the vehicle, and in the event of a catastrophic disconnect, the breakaway cable will pull the pin, which will apply the pedal inside as well. And when the brake pedal is applied, the LED indicator that we mounted will illuminate, letting us know that our system's working properly. We'll begin our installation by mounting all the major components. The largest component is our operating unit, which we mounted directly to the top of the fuse box here. To mount it to the fuse box, I just took the tabs here on each side of the control unit and I bent those so they're straight down. And then I just marked the holes in the side of the lid here and just drilled those out and then used zip ties to zip tie it to the lid. With it like this, you can still open up your fuse box to access fuses if you need to. We also need to mount our breakaway switch and our air fill port where it'll connect to the motorhome. We just took one of the screws out that was pre-existing in the bumper here and attached our bracket to it right up through it. I did add a couple of washers on it to take up some space because I put a small piece of metal on here and bent it down in an L shape so I could attach my breakaway switch to it right there on the side. I then just used another self-tapping screw to go up into the bumper in the other hole in the bracket here. Then I attached the breakaway switch right to that L bracket using the included nut, bolt, and washer that it comes included with it. When you tighten this down, you do want to have a little bit of play in it still, so that way it can pivot as necessary to ensure that it pulls the pin straight. I also like it like this because when you're not using your breakaway switch, you can always just put it down to limit how far things stick out at the front of the vehicle. Then on the inside, we need to mount our actuating cylinder to the pedal. We attach it to the pedal by just simply removing the nuts that is pre-installed on it. Then slide off the metal bar here. You then take your cylinder, slide it over the pedal, take the metal bracket, slide it on the other side, and then reattach it using the nuts. When you tighten these down, you use a 3/8 socket, and I like to just tighten these down by hand using the socket right in my hand because we don't want to over tighten this and bend our metal too much. It won't hold it in place tight. We want just a little bit of a slight bend with it, and you can achieve that by hand much easier so that way you don't over torque it, and it'll still hold it on there very solid, as you see. Coming out the back of our cylinder, we have a cable that needs to attach to the firewall. We can just pull the carpet back here some, and you can see our anchor point down there. And you can see here right behind the carpet, we just ran the metal bracket first into the firewall. It's just a plate with a couple of screws in it, and then the center holes where we actually mounted the anchor for our cylinder. That gives us just a little bit more meat, so that way you can't pull it out of the firewall, since the firewall is kind of thin on your Jeep here. The cable then just slides through the anchor. We'll want to pull out all the slack. You want to have just a little bit of slack in here, so you got to pull on it. We've got just a little bit. That's what we want to ensure that the pedal doesn't ever have any pressure on it when the brakes aren't applied. And then just tighten down the set screw that's located on the anchor there. I found that when tightening this down, if you tighten it down until it feels flush on top, that gives you a good amount of tightness to hold the cable, but it's not going to over tighten it to where it'll damage the cable and cause it to break. Next, we need to mount up the LED indicator. This will let us know when the brakes are applied in our vehicle, and you can usually see this through the backup camera in your motorhome when going down the road. Now, typically the light is put on the back side of your rear view mirror, but our customer requested it to be placed on the dash, so we put it over here off to the side. And it's just got adhesive on the back, double-sided tape, so you'll just peel off the backing, use a little bit of isopropyl alcohol to clean up the area, and then stick it in place. And then the wire just routes down the side there. We just poked it in back behind this panel, ran it all the way down until it comes out the bottom of our panel here. And we just ran it down, here's our cable here, just until it comes out down the bottom here. Over on our actuating cylinder, we also installed the reed switch. The reed switch simply slides in place in the little slot, and there's a small set screw that you'll tighten down using a very small flat-bladed screwdriver. The reed switch has 3 circuits coming out of it. It has a brown, a black, and a blue. The black wire will connect to the red wire from the LED that we'd run down. So that's where this is coming from here. These 2 wires are coming from the LED, so we connect the red wire to the black wire off the reed switch. The black wire off the LED, we connect to the blue wire on the reed switch, and we also connected that to a white wire, which we're going to run to ground. The brown wire off of our reed switch will connect to a power source. You'll get some brown wire in your kit, and we ran this brown wire out towards the battery so we can get that power source. We're right in here now, so let's just chase down the white wire here, which is our ground wire. We just ran this right over to the side of the firewall, and there's a ground stud located right there. So here's our ground stud over here. This is just the lower left kick area. If you see your data link connectors located here on the bottom, it's just to the left of where your OBD port would be. So we just added a ring terminal onto it, removed the nut, slid the ring terminal on it, and attached it back down to give us our ground. Now, as far as our power circuit, we ran this out through the firewall. Your gromet's going to be straight back from this ground and then straight up, and you'll find a grommet located up there that will go outside. We're going to route both the brown wire outside, and we also need to route the airline tubing that comes in our kit through this grommet because it needs to connect into our cylinder here, which just pushes into, and then the other side is going to go out to the operating unit outside. We're now on the outside of the vehicle under the hood, and our grommet where we passed it through is just to the right of our brake vacuum booster. We just take the wire and go up from the grommet, and then we just routed it across the back of the firewall, zip tying it to factory wiring along the way. The brown wire just then comes over here to where we can connect it to our fuse harness to get our power source. So here's our brown wire, where it just brought it over to here. So we've connected our brown wire to a heat shrink butt connector. I do recommend heat shrink butt connectors for any of the ones outside of the vehicle here. We just use the regular butt connectors that came with our kit inside, but out here this is going to ensure no moisture can get in. We also use the red wire that comes in our kit. You're going to get a small bundle of red wire. We attach that also to the same end of this butt connector. The other end of this butt connector connects to the fuse harness that comes in our kit, and this just runs over right here to the power cord that goes underneath our fuse box cover. And again, you can just pull this back to access that right there. And this is just a single nut that we removed. We put a ring terminal on the other end of our fuse harness and then just tightened the nut back down. Also, while we're up here, we're going to take a look at our operating unit. It has 2 black wires coming off of it. One of those black wires is going to go towards our breakaway switch, and so is the red wire here. This is also going to go towards the breakaway switch. So we'll be following that in just a moment. The other black wire coming off of our operating unit here just goes to ground. So we just ran that right over to the battery post right here, the negative post, put a ring terminal on the end, remove the nut, and reinstalled it there to get the ground. Now, as far as these go, they run around our air intake box, and then they just go straight down from there. You can actually go down, if you stick your arm through this little hole here, you can actually reach the wires to feed them down. And then after going over the frame rail, we zip tie it to factory wiring, and this is where we make our connections down here. Our breakaway switch mounted at the front has an orange wire on it, and it also has a black wire on it. The black wire, we're just going to connect directly to the black wire coming off of our operating unit. The orange wire we connect to the red wire that we had run down. We did have to add a little bit of extra black wire here coming from the operating unit to have enough length to make it down to our breakaway switch. You do get extra black wire with your kit as well, so you'll be able to do that. The air hose that we had connected to the actuating cylinder inside routed the exact same path as the brown wire that we'd run over, except it goes right here to our operating unit and it connects to the air out, because air is going to be going out and to our cylinder to activate it. The air in, right located here, is going to take just 1/4 inch line. It just pokes in. These are just a quick connect fitting, so you just poke your end in there. And then this just runs down. It follows a similar path as our breakaway switch wires. Comes down the front. There was a pre-existing hole the customer had already drilled here for some of his other accessories, so we just came out that pre-existing hole and then poked into the quick connect fitting here on the quick connect fitting on the front. And lastly, we need to tap into our vacuum line on our vehicle. We cut a small portion of the 3/8 vacuum line that comes in our kit, about 1.5 inches. We put the check valve that comes in our kit with the black side facing towards the unit in there. We then used a large portion of the hose that comes in our kit to route it across towards our vacuum booster, and it just goes right around. And once we get over here, this is our factory vacuum booster line right here. So we cut the line there, we placed the T down in it. This side goes off towards the operating unit, and then this side we cut just a small portion of hose, added another check valve on there with the black side facing towards the engine, and then just reconnected it back to the factory vacuum line. We did put hose clamps on it once we were done to ensure that our connections stay made. We've now moved out to our motorhome. We've got a few parts that we need to install on this side to give us that air signal it's going to activate the Air Force One. We're first going to mount a quick connect fitting here at the back. This is the female one that comes in your kit. We put the male one on the vehicle side. This just ran up using a couple of self-tapping screws to get that in place. We have an airline tubing that comes out this, and this runs up to the air tank that we installed underneath the vehicle. We installed the tank just in front of the rear axle. You'll have your relay blocks here for all of your braking components, and we've got a cross beam here. We mounted our tank to the cross beam. We just held the tank up there. There's a couple of pre-drilled holes in the bracket here. We just marked those holes, drilled them out with a 3/8 drill bit, and then secured it using the 3/8 hardware that comes included with it. Now, in order to make the connections we need, we are going to tap into a couple of existing lines on the motorhome. We're going to need to tap into the supply line, which is located here. This line is the air supply that goes to our relay blocks. This is going to be pressurized. So to install this, you'll first want to drain the air out of the motorhome. To do that, you just simply press the brakes repeatedly while the motorhome's off, and each press is going to deplete some air. Once you've pressed it enough times, you will deplete enough of the air out where you can make the disconnect it. And you can hear that when you're pressing the brakes. It's going to sound like it has a lot of pressure, and then you'll hear it decrease over time as you're pressing it. Once you've identified the line, and the way I identified it is I just pulled it out. This is also the thickest, largest line. But we just pulled it out, and then we started the motorhome, and air started coming out of the line, letting us know this is supply. It's trying to fill the system. We then plugged it back in. We cut it with our hose cutters. We took the quick connect fitting that comes in our kit and just poked in the ends from where we had cut it right into there. And then out the bottom here, we've got a 1/4 inch line quick connect. That 1/4 inch line quick connect, we use some of the 1/4 inch line that comes in our kit and just routed it down to our tank. And you can see the arrow here pointing in because this is supply going into our tank. Next, we need to tap into our metered air. The metered air line will only have air coming out of it when the brake pedal is depressed. So the easiest way to test this is, again, you want to drain the air out of the system first, and then come down here and disconnect the metered air line when we're identifying. To verify you've got the correct line, you'll then start your motorhome. No air should come out of this line. Once a little bit of air is built up in the motorhome, have an assistant press the brakes, and then down here just verify that when the brake is pressed, air comes out of this line. If it does, you've got the correct line, you've got your metered air. We'll then just simply plug it back in. We'll make our cut just like we did with the supply. This is a smaller quick connect. This will poke into our supply air, so just push those ends in, and then we've got a 1/4 inch fitting coming out of our T here. This one will route down, and it will go to the point right here on our tank. The last point on our tank is a swivel fitting, and this actually runs back to the quick connect fitting we had mounted at the back of the motorhome. So we just route this down and follow the factory wiring going through the clamps all the way back until we reach that fitting, and then we just poke it into the quick connect on it. Now that we've got all of our components installed, we can go ahead and hook it up to our motorhome. We've gone ahead and hooked up our tow bar and electrical connectors. We've got a couple extra connections for our braking system. We have our air line that we need to connect, so we're going to plug the female side of the air line onto the male end on the vehicle, and then we'll take the male end of our hose and plug it into the female side over on our motorhome. We'll also need to take our breakaway cable and attach it to the breakaway switch, and then also to one of the safety chain loops over on our motorhome. If the carabiner's not large enough to click on the actual hitch, you can just wrap the cable around and then clip it on itself. The only thing we have left to do is place our vehicle into flat tow mode, and then we're ready to hit the road. And that completes our installation of Demco's Air Force One supplemental braking system on our 2014 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited.